In the quiet suburbs of Buffalo, Dan Morgan appears to be living the perfect American dream. He's a top car salesman, a dedicated family man, and someone who truly understands people's needs and motivations. Month after month, he earns the title of Salesman of the Month, not through aggressive tactics, but by genuinely connecting with his customers. His colleague Hal is the complete opposite, bursting into the dealership with reckless speed and wild energy. But Dan keeps things steady and reliable. That's who he is, or at least, that's who everyone thinks he is. Dan leaves work early one afternoon, excited to celebrate his wedding anniversary with his wife Jessica. They have 3 children together. Nina, their eldest daughter, once dreamed of becoming a journalist and even served as editor of her school paper. But lately, she's been talking about following her boyfriend Trevor to Iowa and abandoning everything she worked for. Kyle, their son, struggles to communicate with his father. What Dan doesn't know is that Kyle has been secretly paying his friend Samir to use his garage as a streaming setup. Under the alias Kilbu, Kyle has become a popular gaming streamer, known for his incredible skills in shooting games. And then there's Max, their youngest, still in diapers and blissfully unaware of the family tensions brewing around him. The anniversary celebration takes Dan and Jessica to a local amusement park, something they do every single year. While waiting in line for a roller coaster, some teenagers recognize Kilby from Kyle's stream playing on their phones. They're so absorbed that they let Dan and Jessica cut ahead. Jessica loves her husband, but she's craving something more than their predictable routine. She jokes about how they even have intimacy scheduled for Thursdays. After the roller coaster, Dan promises to be more spontaneous, less predictable. But then, during a tender moment, a young man nearby snaps a photo of them without permission. Dan politely asks him to delete it. The guy refuses, mocks them, posts the photo online, and calls Dan a loser. When the stranger spills his drink on Dan and taunts Jessica about being with a wimp, something dark flickers across Dan's face. But he walks away. Jessica assures him she didn't want a confrontation, knowing how much Dan hates violence. Still, there's a hint of disappointment in her voice. That night, Dan mutters that he should have stood up to the guy, which makes Jessica laugh. She sees his frustration, but doesn't understand where it truly comes from. The next day, Jessica attends a kickboxing class, where she meets a woman named Gwen. They bond over smoothies after Jessica accidentally punches Gwen in the face. Jessica opens up about feeling trapped, about how Dan seems so content with their mundane life while she dreams of traveling and seeing the world. Gwen reveals she's a travel agent visiting Buffalo to see her ex, and before leaving to catch a flight, she gives Jessica her business card. Meanwhile, Dan takes Max shopping. A suspicious man begins observing them. Suddenly, that man lunges at Dan. Even while holding his baby, Dan asks to put Max down first, but the attacker won't wait. With stunning precision, Dan neutralizes the threat while protecting his son. Onlookers stare in shock. Dan drives home like a man possessed, his neighbors sensing something different about him. At home, he opens a secret compartment hidden in their house, revealing guns, outdated passports, and stacks of cash. Dan immediately contacts someone named Augie, an old associate from a life he left behind. He needs new identities for his entire family. Augie delivers devastating news. Dan's former boss, McCaffrey, has been searching the entire world for him. That photo posted online may have exposed his location. Dan offers $500,000 for new documents and arranges to meet Augie in Las Vegas in 3 days. Augie is shocked to learn that Dan's family has no idea about his past. He was a professional assassin. Augie warns him that running from McCaffrey's mercenaries will be nearly impossible if his family doesn't understand the danger they're in. But Dan can't bring himself to tell them. Not yet. Instead, He frantically packs their belongings and races to the children's school. He finds Nina under the bleachers with her friends and learns she quit her position as editor 3 months ago. At Samir's house, he discovers Kyle's secret streaming setup. Dan tells both kids they're going to Las Vegas, and they better act excited in front of their mother or he'll expose all their lies. At Jessica's workplace, Dan uses his salesman charm to convince her they need this spontaneous trip. She's confused but intrigued by this sudden change in her husband. Then Dan spots a black SUV outside and his entire demeanor shifts. They need to leave now. As they drive away, McCaffrey's men appear. Dan weaves through traffic, making up excuses about squirrels and potholes while his family remains oblivious to the chase happening around them. He drives straight to his car dealership and lifts their vehicle with everyone still inside, claiming he needs to check the oil. Underneath, he finds the tracking device and removes it. Then he spots Hal about to test drive a car and convinces him to really open it up on the freeway, secretly attaching the tracker to Hal's vehicle. The pursuers take the bait. With 33 hours until they reach Las Vegas, Dan collects everyone's phones, declaring it a device-free family trip. The kids are furious, but Dan insists. He throws all the phones out of the car window as everyone watches. Without technology, they're forced to use old paper maps, and something unexpected happens. The family starts to bond. They sing together in the van, creating genuine moments of connection they haven't experienced in years. But McCaffrey is relentless. He visits their home personally, and his tech specialist discovers Kyle's identity as Kilby. McCaffrey orders every available operative to find that van. During a rest stop, a girl recognizes Kyle and asks for a photo. When Dan learns she plans to post it online, he immediately tells everyone the hotel is booked and they need to keep driving. McCaffrey hires a local motorcycle gang to track them down. On a bridge, 3 bikers close in. Dan puts calming music through his family's headphones and they all drift off to sleep, bobbing their heads peacefully while he prepares his silenced weapon. His mirror gets shot, but he manages to eliminate the threats. Only baby Max stays awake, even helping by handing his father a bottle at just the right moment. When Nina asks about the bumps, Dan casually mentions potholes. After driving through the night, they stop near the college Nina wants to attend. Despite Jessica's reluctance to visit just so Nina can see her boyfriend, they tour the campus. It's gorgeous, full of life and energy. Dan tells Jessica that if they want Nina to listen to them, they should start listening to her. At a campus party, Jessica shows off her athletic past by doing a keg stand, impressing even Nina. But Dan notices a suspicious man and engages him in conversation, even speaking German to prevent Jessica from understanding. His instincts were right. A different operative attacks him in a chemistry lab while his family tour just on the other side of the wall. Dan subdues the attacker and rejoins his family as if nothing happened. Nina finds her boyfriend Trevor with another girl. When she confronts him, he claims monogamy is just a social construct. Heartbroken, she returns to the van. Dan doesn't lecture her. Instead, he teaches her a martial arts technique, a 13th century move that inflicts pain without lasting damage. Nina uses it on Trevor, takes a photo of his anguished face, and returns to the van with newfound confidence. She thanks her father, and their relationship deepens. Dan even admits he's read all her articles and gotten chills from her piece on corruption in the Board of Education. That night at a small motel, Jessica and Dan finally reconnect. She's fascinated by this spontaneous side of him, wondering if he was always like this before they met. Dan reassures her that he changed because he didn't like who he was back then. The next morning, Dan calls Augie, who's on his way with the new identities. But Dan still hasn't told his family the truth, and Augie is horrified. Dan tries to have a conversation with Kyle, who opens up about his streaming career. It's not just a hobby. He's genuinely talented, skilled enough that even the Air Force recruits gamers. Dan challenges him to laser tag. If Kyle wins, he can game again. If Dan wins, they play ball together for 6 months. Dan dominates at first, using tactics from his assassin training, but Kyle adapts and nearly wins. In the end, Dan takes the final point, but the experience brings them closer together. Finally, they arrive in Las Vegas. Dan meets Augie downstairs and receives new identities and one-way tickets to Vancouver. He plans to tell Jessica everything over a romantic dinner. Meanwhile, he strictly instructs the kids not to leave their suite under any circumstances. Of course, they ignore him immediately. Kyle wants to visit the HyperX gaming arena, and Nina reluctantly tags along. At the arena, Kyle meets another popular gamer named Ran, who introduces him to Valkyrae. She invites Kyle to join her team for the Valorant finals. Nina connects with Ran while Kyle plays. When Valkyrae's entire team is eliminated, Kyle single-handedly destroys the opposing team, cementing his reputation. At the French restaurant, Dan tries multiple times to confess his past to Jessica, but they're constantly interrupted. Frustrated, he begins explaining everything in French, knowing she doesn't speak the language. Jessica finds it romantic and sexy, completely unaware he's revealing his life as an assassin. They go gambling instead, postponing the truth once again. When they return to the suite, Jessica is fooled by dummies the kids set up to look like them sleeping. She prepares a romantic atmosphere with candles and love mist. The mist reveals laser sights cutting through the darkness. Dan dodges bullets, grabs a bottle of tequila, throws it, shoots it midair, and sets the attackers on fire. But Jessica is taken hostage. The assassin calls Dan by the name Sean, and Jessica's entire world shatters. Dan eliminates the threat, but Jessica vomits from the shock. Then she remembers the kids. They find the dummies, and Jessica remembers the assassin mentioning HyperX. They race to the gaming arena. Dan finally admits the truth. Before meeting Jessica, he was a covert assassin. The kids don't believe him until bullets start flying. Dan takes down the mercenary, and now it's Kyle's turn to throw up. In the aftermath, Dan reveals everything. He was responsible for 43 deaths working for McCaffrey. The kids call him a hypocrite for banning gaming while being a real-life killer. He hands them new identities. Nina is now Molly Anderson. Kyle is Van, named after a vehicle. After 18 years of lies, the family refuses to accept him. Jessica decides to leave with the kids. She calls Gwen for help, and amazingly, Gwen arrives with a private jet. On board, Gwen tells Jessica about her ex in Buffalo, how he left her to marry another woman, how she got close to that woman and waited patiently for her to walk into a trap. Jessica realizes Gwen is talking about her. McCaffrey appears. He's been behind everything. McCaffrey calls Dan and shows him his captured family. They arrange a meeting at an abandoned hotel. When Dan arrives, McCaffrey asks for a hug. Then he reveals the shocking truth. He's Dan's father. McCaffrey wanted Dan dead for abandoning him, but after watching Dan eliminate every operative sent after him, he felt pride instead. Now he wants Dan back. The deal is simple. Dan returns to work for him and the family goes free. But Dan can never contact them again. With no choice, Dan agrees. As McCaffrey's men escort the family to an elevator, something changes. The kids don't want to abandon their father. Jessica uses Max's dirty diaper as a weapon, throwing an operative to his death. They're going back for Dan. While McCaffrey makes arrangements, Gwen tries to seduce Dan, but he puts her to sleep and the family infiltrates the building. Dan apologizes to Jessica for all the secrets, explaining that there was never a right time to tell her, not on their first date, not when she was pregnant, not ever. He just wanted to be her husband and the kid's father. The tech guy they captured turns out to be Kyle's fan. Kyle uses a drone to be Dan's eyes and ears while he faces McCaffrey's army. One by one, Dan eliminates the mercenaries with Kyle's help. McCaffrey shoots down the drone and finds the family on the roof. Gwen corners them while Jessica is buried under rubble. But the thought of her children in danger gives Jessica superhuman strength. She grabs a bamboo pole and after one failed athletic attempt, throws it like a spear, impaling Gwen. McCaffrey beats Dan in hand-to-hand combat and prepares to finish him. But Nina speaks up, telling her grandfather that she doesn't just see a cold-blooded killer. She sees family. She admits she was just stalling to buy Dan time. He makes his move, and the family reunites as police sirens wail in the distance. 6 months later, everything has changed. Nina becomes a famous journalist by exposing McCaffrey's assassin organization. Dan starts a security training company and hires Augie. Jessica becomes a coach, and Kyle continues his streaming career with his parents' blessing. As they pack an RV to take Nina to Stanford, they establish a new family tradition. Everyone gives up their phones just for a little while to enjoy being together, because now they know what really matters. And that's the family plan. Thanks for watching.